Hey folks, welcome to the stream. This is Connor here in Pittsburgh, and we are drawing some vacation photos from the before times, from the pre-COVID era. I was out in California for a couple weeks. My folks live out there, and so I was catching up with them in their retirement. And helping them out with some of their retirement projects, and I was also kind of exploring a lot of the environmental landscapes around the Bay Area, and so I took a lot of photos, and I have been meaning to go back through and look at the photos and do kind of fun sketching from them. And the reason for that is because I didn't do that during the actual vacation, And that was a decision. That was a decision I made on purpose. I said I'm going to try to write and sketch every day and keep at least a daily journal, but if I see something that I know I can photograph in order to document, I will photograph it, and I will make a promise to myself to go back and look at these photographs as if I was still standing right there, and try to reconstruct what I would have been. Try to still find inspiration in these things, even though it's been a couple months, and, well, the world's very different than it was March 16th or whatever day it was that this photo is from. We were still getting mixed messages. I think that if I was going to retitle this drawing stream, I would retitle it Mixed Messages. From the administration, from various governors. I mean, that hasn't stopped. But anyway, let us go back to the before times. That was a very bad kind of dream harp. Right, so where are we? This is Bear Island, Lower Bear Island. And you can see this was definitely like pre-quarantine, because there's all kinds of folks out here. So Bear Island is in the Bay Area. This is not an accurate representation of the Bay Area, or the peninsula, or the coast, but bear with me. San Francisco is this top 7x7 square miles, and then there's a number of cities that run right along the internal bay coastline. As you look over on this side of the bay, and actually on that lower side too, if we were looking at satellite photos, you would see all of these kind of levees that make rectilinear structures, and those are actually salt depositing fields, right? Those are deliberately engineered structures where they let salt water in, and then they close all the gates off, and they let all the water evaporate, and they use it for salt. That's how we get some different kinds of salts that we use. And salts, I mean that in a general chemical engineering sense. The vast majority of one little section of the periodic table is the salts, right? It's not just table salt or kind of like mineral salt that you might be thinking of. It's all kinds of sulfides and things like that. I don't know that those all come from the sea, but I do know that these are used for a variety of applications. They turn different colors because of different kind of algal blooms that are happening. You can see them from space. Anyway, over here, there is what had been farmland in kind of 3 smaller sections, and they kept trying to build soil on top of this and try to make it productive farmland, but it is a little bit too far into the bay, and its natural state is to be it's no longer, it has subsided a little bit, and it is subsiding. it's losing soil and it's sinking into the bay. And it had gotten weird for a while, and then it became like a very protected area, and now because it is this kind of like strange long estuary that takes this coastline that's very thin between the parts of the land that are driven by fresh water and the parts of the bay and ocean that are all saltwater, it makes a very wide kind of riparian buffer between the land and the bay, and so there's all kinds of creatures that live in there that are totally fascinating. So we'll kind of like zoom in, you know, on this part. And I'm drawing this from memory. I think that basically, like, right here is Century 12, which is like a real rundown movie theater that I saw all kinds of 90s and 2000s movies there. I remember I went to there because I was going to go see Wing Commander, and I wanted to see Wing Commander, the Johnny Lee Miller vehicle. God, I don't even know who was in Wing Commander. But anyway, right near the 101 highway. Century 12 is right here. There's kind of a weird, like sewer inlet or something, right? Some kind of big industrial reason for there to be a big gap between these properties. And you kind of like go off the highway, come back around, over, come up. You park over in this parking lot, and then there's basically a marina right here. With a bunch of condos up here, and this keeps going, and there's like this road keeps going, and this is a big island, or a big peninsula that goes out, and I think has like some more roads on this other side, but there's a parking garage, or a parking lot here, a public parking lot right here, and then you kind of walk up and over, and this is all water. You go across a bridge, and then you are on Lower Bear Island, and you can kind of see Middle Bear Island, and Upper Bear Island goes even further up, out into the bay. This is not quite to scale. None of this is to scale, I'm sorry, but this is SF, this is Oakland. Right, the other thing you see from space is over here, the back channel, Jack London Square, and the just massive port of Oakland, the container port that's adjacent to the old port. Downtown's next to the old port, but the container port, which used to be the neighborhood where the African American service workers who worked in downtown in the 30s and 40s, probably even the 10s and 20s, got kind of like congregated over in this section of town in the flats, and then they built a container port here and created a huge pollution mess that all of those idling trucks, those, it's like young black lungs that take the toll from all of the idling trucks that idle next to this massive entrepot, right, this whole city-sized container port. Alexis Madrigal's Containers podcast from a couple years back does an excellent job covering the whole context of all of that, and like everything you would ever want to know about the history of kind of West Coast shipping, from stevedores up to containerization and the present. And it's a fascinating history about an industry that just fundamentally all the math changed because someone figured out that the math could change and pushed for it to change, and like year after year, standard for one big size of industrial box started to be held by the shipping industry, the rail industry, and the truck industry, the trucking industry, right, all interlinked to transportation globally. And that's an incredible feat, right? That's the invention that powers the modern era. That's why we are able to have the global society that we have. That's why we're able to generate the economies of scale that we can, because the cost of transport is totally nothing compared to the cost of manufacture, of original mining of whatever the thing is, that, you know, like whatever the raw material is, whatever the work that's been put into the piece. All of that is way more expensive than the transportation. The transportation's like a tiny piece of that cost when everything's in a container. So that industry had to change, you know, and it changed in managed ways sometimes and in deeply unmanaged ways other times. And there were a lot of people who lost out in the unmanaged times, and frankly, there were a lot of people who got fucked over during the managed times. This is why this is not a stream for kids. Stay off of here, kids. This is for, like, me. I do not remember off the top of my head how to spell Bear Island. I feel like it's B-A-I-R, but let's see. B-A-I-R, island off of Redwood City. Parking things. Oh, right, yeah, so the music right now. Free Music Archive. The vaporwave genre. We're listening to Bay. We've been listening to the Soft and Furious. Oh, wait, no, the artist is Soft and Furious. The album is Bay. This has been soul R&B, electronic, techno, and synth, vaporwave. We're about to be listening to Mystery Mammal's album Latent, which I think rounds out the end of this page, over on Free Music Archive. So, where is this? This is Bear Island. Right, so what else have I drawn here? So what these people are walking to, they're taking the short path that goes to that slightly raised, oh sorry, we're looking down here, that slightly raised platform, which is like one of the only kind of man-made structures on the island, besides, I believe, basically all of these embankments are gravel fill that was carefully tended as the roads that get you across the sort of semi-flooded islands. And the tide comes in and out, which is really the characteristic that is awesome about Bear Island, is that because this water is moving and the shoreline is constantly growing and shrinking, all kinds of creatures take advantage of when the tide goes out to try to go for creatures that don't swim out to the water again fast enough. You know, like birds will come in and try to eat crustaceans that don't move back into the water quickly enough. And when the tide comes in, the same thing, right? Like birds that are down here that are still trying to like get all the best grubbins will get predated upon by things that are in the water, and vice versa, right? And some birds are water birds, and I don't just want to limit this to species versus species or phylum versus phylum within, you know, mammals, birds, reptiles, crustaceans. It's a free-for-all, you know. Down in that little beach world where this tide feels like this huge, you know, kind of football field battle, this pitched battle that occurs every day. It's like, wait, how do the tides work? Right, it's the moon, so it's every day. They go in, They have a maximum and they have a minimum, and that changes every day because they rotate past the moon every day. Not quite every day, right? That's what. Excuse me. Having tide calendars is about, and that's what moons and months, all of that. Anyway, Bear Island has a huge amount of wildlife, not just the people, but like creatures. There we go. So there were a lot of these little duck guys, these little loons. I don't know if that's really easy to see, but I still have like a pretty clear memory of these guys, which was that they just seemed sharp. These were these very dark-eyed duck-bill guys, almost like little swans. I didn't know what those were, but over here, this guy's floating, so we'll put him in some appropriate kind of water patching. So I don't know if you can see down here what happens in the water. When you're drawing water and land and things that are reflected on the water, you are, well, here, we'll kind of, here's my scene that is beyond the shore. We'll put the shoreline right here. And this is the nominal water level at this particular time. If I'm looking with my eye, I will perceive the close distance, the middle distance, the far distance, here, here, and here, as I'm looking this way. And in addition to that, what happens with the water is that it bounces things off of it, equal angle, equal bounce. And so, commensurate with where, so this is like this is like this. Depending on how these have to bounce, when you're looking through the water, what you end up seeing is essentially the straight line versions of these bounced rays to the inverse, to the underwater portion, right, to the reflection. So that's nominally the reflections happening here. So in reading this image here, what's happening is our eyes are looking, starting, I'm going to use the pen's level, starting at the shoreline and going up. Our eyes are looking at the real image here, and we're looking at it from its base, from the shoreline up. And we see the front of the shore, the first slope back, a little rise. If there was a mountain, this case, maybe this is us drawing these first rows of bushes, and so you see the bottom of the bush, the middle of the bush, the top, right? When you're looking at the reflection, and you're starting at the shore, and you go down, as your eye draws down, you see everything upside down. Not rolled around 180 degrees, but flipped, almost if this was transparent and you took it like a page in a book and just flipped the transparency over along the axis of the water line, that's what your eye sees. So, when you're drawing things that are in the water, if the background goes from dark up towards the horizon and gets lighter and lighter and lighter. And because of the blue distance, right, because of the particles of air between us and these telephone poles or power lines, and us, and even further out, that's Oakland, real distantly. That's Oakland in the East Bay. We're kind of looking northwest-ish. And then these are the mountains that are on the far side of the East Bay. So as we look up and further into the distance, things get lighter and bluer and lighter and bluer until until beyond the lightest, bluest piece of landscape is the light blue sky. In the same way that the landscape in hue goes from dark up to light, when you're drawing things that are in water, you can see that this water is characterized by going from dark down into a pure reflection of the sky, right? And so when you are looking at what happens with water effects, what you see is that where the water is very flat, it neatly mirrors whatever's above it, and the height, right, between what gets mirrored and its image depends on how close to the waterline it is, or in the case of this egret right here, it's like half in the water, right? So it looks like its legs stop and just go right into the mirror image legs, because those legs are actually going through this reflective plane, and so you see both the bird up top and the bird underneath at the same time. And you can see that right there, that these guys are hanging out as reflections of each other. The other thing that you see that characterizes water is that water typically it's not a glassy surface, right? Well, it's like a mostly glassy surface, but it's glass that gets all chewed up. It's glass that gets chewed up by wind, by the ripples of plants and animals, by all kinds of slight movements, right? And the way that we detect that is both that the straight lines of the landscape become these kind of hazy, choppy versions of themselves, right? You can see that as you are looking past the highest bush that you could see looking down through the water, you go right into sky, because this looking down into the water, that reflection is actually at a slightly different, you can see from here, right, like it's not, we don't get a pure, unless we were at sort of worm's eye level, looking straight across the water, we don't get a pure view, an equal view of these two landscapes. We see a lot of this landscape, and we see just the front edge of the under landscape. So you can see that the landscape, as it would be viewed from sort of underneath, bouncing back up in reflection, fades away right here, and it fades from sky to land by being a little bit choppy and going from sky with a little couple of places where the land gets picked up by water that's not totally flat, and its curvature causes a slightly different reflection to occur. This is a place where water's been super perturbed by something moving around, or water flowing, or a gust of wind, and then the egret, you can see just a little bit of sky reflected in the part of the water around his feet that he's kind of moving around down over here. And so, one way that a lot of people draw water, which I really appreciate, is to kind of draw the entire upper scene and then flip the whole page over, which feels kind of crazy, and do it again, but in almost, well, at a slightly different angle, right? A re-rendering where the bushes are taller. The first bushes you see are taller. The first landforms you encounter are steeper to the eye. And so you lose, you don't get a reflection necessarily of any of those towers in the distance because they're just not visible from the angle that this is at. So we're here. This light comes down. Now because this is reflecting sky, we can just color in the pure hues of what that looks like. We don't need to think about if it's reflecting this crane or not, what's going on there. None of that matters because it's just reflecting the super light blue of distance value that's up reflected from up at the top of the image, right? Up here is where the light's coming from as it bounces. Near where he's been moving. I'm gonna just add a couple extra. This is stuff that the pixels only just suggest that. This is maybe a little more clear. That the water's flowing this way. Oh yeah, here we go. Sorry, the water's flowing this way, both in the picture and here. So the reflection of the sky, that the disturbance that this crane's legs are causing as they break the plane of the water and cause this reflection of the sky has this kind of trailing V shape to it because it's the water flowing around an impediment and causing a little bit of upward roil as it has to squish around either side of the leg. So what's going on with this bird? Well, this bird is kind of keeping its legs so still, keeping its body so sort of like sneakily moving, and keeping its head so delicately moving, and then still, that it can spot fish under the water. And the fish can't quite put together the geometry of, and I'll draw this in purple. That'll be our underworld. The truth of the underworld, right? What's actually down there is that this guy's legs keep going. And he's got 1 foot there, and he's got another leg here that, he's moving forward, and he's been walking on the underside down here, and he's been looking for little fish. Or for little crabs. Or for little newts or what have you, These guys will even eat other birds. They are predatory, right? Imagine them at our scale, right? Something that's the size of a giraffe, weighs about as much as an ostrich, but just stays absolutely still and just poof, pops down at you with his sharp beak, right? This beak's meant to just like poke the crack out of something, really injure it. Spear fish, even. That's kind of like the rumor, the ancient rumor about cranes is that the beak goes right through the thing that they're trying to eat, which some of them do. Sometimes that happens. I don't know how conscious of behavior it is, but I'll have to. It's something to add to the research pile, right? So, the reflection of this guy, though, is that he's kind of here, And this part of his belly we see as being pretty light, right? I mean, there's a little bit, there's a little bit here that's darker than the rest, underneath the legs and stuff. But looking from even further below, right, this perspective actually sees a very unlit version of that belly, and so this, you can see, is in just a little bit more shadow down here than the top. So it's something I'm just trying to capture. Right, it's very weird, right? These kind of like connect, but they don't connect. And then back here is the shoreline. And I guess what I'm not drawing, but which I'm implying, is that both the water and the shore are a mess. They're very dark. I've actually done almost an inversion of these colors in order to try to capture this, which is funny and interesting. So I'm not quite sure how I'm going to capture the water, or the water having to change, but maybe I just won't even mess with that. I think that this is relatively instructive on its own. I mean, you can kind of see that. Oh, right, I guess I can do this. I can give the water some abstract horizontal texture. And this is just to represent almost the many different wave breaks that this little wave break image is characterized as representing. It's funny, these lines almost look like a newspaperman's trick. This was a really common style in newsprint to convey value and hue in a drawing, because it wouldn't overwhelm the press to print. You know, it wasn't full bleed black, right? It was just a fast, convenient method to fill in a whole river, or something like a whole river, because once you've been a newspaper illustrator who's drawn the opening of 10 different factories on 10 different waterfronts, you get real used to very quickly putting together the next issue's picture of a factory on a waterfront. There are some patches of it that kind of no longer require much setup. You already know how this is going to get filled. I don't know that I did a wonderful job conveying the change in line density here. This isn't a strong shoreline. I also may have overly highlighted our subject here, the cattle egret, by keeping all of this line work away from it, when in fact it needs more. But not too much more. I don't want to lose too much. Alright. How do we like that? That's cool. Ooh. This is not Vaporwave. I mean, this Vaporwave, I'm not saying it's disappointing. It's definitely techno, which can be disappointing. I think a lot of people are disappointed by it. This is a cool hair. I saw this hair right on Barren Island, right? This was during a long 101. Oh, right, yeah, 101 just keeps going. North is that way. South is that way. Yeah, so that's the freeway there. You can see it all open. Oh, yeah, right up top. But we're gonna focus on this bad boy. Hair buddy. So rabbits and hares are lagomorphs, I believe they're called. And if you've ever heard the term lagomorph used for a rabbit, or used in kind of science fiction, I guess. Well, yeah, so you probably have heard the term used in relation to rabbits and hares. It has been used in science fiction. It was actually used in The Time Machine, the H.G. Wells book. A lot of people don't go back and read kind of the full book, the full detail of the book. They focus on different new media interpretations of it, new movies. And, there's been a variety of different ways that people have tried to portray the book. One thing that doesn't usually make it into those adaptations because it's sort of unpalatable is that the Morlocks and Eloi, he encounters them and sees that they have this struggle where there's this kind of class society division that becomes very much about the author's actual class society divisions, because that's the world that he was referencing when he wrote the book. That was the world that he was able to portray to the reader, and kind of if there was a political aim. Oh, sorry, yeah, this rabbit's been out of frame. And wow, he looks kind of goofy now that I've drawn him down here. I I'm doing something a little interpretive. I'm just trying to outline patches or things like patches across this creature's body. The author ends up, or well, the narrator ends up going even further into the future than the scene with the many scenes with the Eloi and the Morlocks, which are still sort of human-like, really human-like. And when he goes to the future, the Eloi are straight up just rabbit people. Like, they are smaller, they're becoming rabbit-sized. They don't look like people anymore. They've had enough time to actually physically evolve into being a prey species, because that class division was kind of the only remnant that was left of, after our society fell apart, this split between the aggressive and the docile became the classes that would resist and fight, and the classes that would not, the classes that would punish other people, and the classes that would not. That is what becomes of the Morlocks and the Eloys. They return to nature. They become wolves and rabbits. And whatever morality kept both wolves and rabbits alive, now those wolves and rabbits are just locked into a predatory cycle where the one is going to just eat the other forever. And the rabbits are going to flee forever. And I don't know how much H.G. Wells harped on it in the book. I can't remember. But I guess my opinion is that static state where the Eloi have tended towards their most rabbit-like and are going to stay like that, presumably until the end of the universe, and not migrate back towards humanity, not migrate back towards having the brain chemicals to fight back, to withstand the trauma of these predatory Morlocks that come out of the ground. Right, because what's wrong with the Eloi is that they have bad brain chemistry. What's wrong with the Eloi is that they no longer feel the chemicals to resist. They just don't. They won't. And so it doesn't go well for them. And so I wonder if Wells had an implication that there was a steady state that they had tended towards, right? That humanity was an aberration on the intelligence and sort of divergence from other animals curve, and that what happens at the end of the time machine is regression back to the mean, right? Which is normal. You get an interesting event, and then it slowly fades back into the background. Oh yeah, different guy, different rabbit down there. What a beautiful one, though. Really like all of the different fur patterns. California, the environmental problem's heat, right? It's trying to be an exothermic, a heat-generating creature in a place that is very hot, and managing your heat is very important. And so one of the things that's very interesting to draw on these heat-tolerant hairs is the different ways that their fur expresses, the different patterns across the surfaces that are going to see a lot of heat, across the surfaces that need to have a lot of light come in, across the surfaces that shouldn't get too much heat and should kind of radiate heat out, like lose heat. And so whether these are black or white, or a mixture of both, what is happening with all of these fur patterns is totally germane to how this rabbit functions. And kind of which parts of itself it tends to expose to the sun, which parts are camouflage, which parts are, well, it loses a huge amount of heat through its ears, right? That's a great, these are all blood vessel surfaces, and it just like, can cycle heat through there like a big weather vane. This is not right. This is diverging from right the more I draw it, but there we are. What this guy has is this characteristic. One thing that is weird about rabbits. Oh, I didn't. So what's wrong with this rabbit? What's kind of wrong with that rabbit? Oh, definitely in the front. I forget. Do they have problems with the front paws? Yeah. Look at this foot, man. This is the ankle. That's the shin bone, that upright right here. And then it's got this massive thighs and glutes. God, this rabbit looks weird. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if this is some, like, nightmare fuel rabbit. I don't intend it to be, but this is just how the drawing came together. Maybe I'm just perturbed today and, like, not quite on the ball when it comes to handling geometry. But yeah, here's this rabbit. He looks real freaky. And what's really interesting is that it looks like the way that he's sitting, actually, the center of gravity is way down. His belly is way down here in a way that's a little bit hard for us to capture, and that his center of gravity is sitting right, actually, kind of above and behind, maybe right on his knees, almost like a little pivot. He's just ready to spring forward. That would be very cool. Right, so some of this fur I'm doing as a field of lines. Some of the fur I'm doing as individual lines going back in. Here I'm ignoring the actual direction of the fur in order to instead capture a uniform field. I think there's already a lot going on in this drawing, so I'm not going to add directionality to make things any weirder. It's already a pretty weird drawing, guys. I'll give you that. Something dark happened to these ears. That's not true. Wow, yeah, you can really see the difference between this paw here, which has in the photo uh, pretty dark exterior coloration, and this paw right here up front, where we're seeing the other side of it, and it has just comparatively a really light hue to it. Same thing down here with these feet; they're just not that dark. The face, though, is all texture. Hmm. Hmm. Just adding some ground cover down here. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, so I've filled a page here. It's been a solid hour. I think that this is this the end of the Bear Island photos? Let me just double check. We got this one. Um, you can just see, like, this is all tidal land, so all of this is kind of underwater sometimes, above water sometimes. It's very cool. Same thing here. Oh yeah, and we're done. Now we're over at this Ferrari, and I think that the next picture is actually, yeah, it's Chinese food. This is used to be called Su Hong's to go. Their General Tso's chicken lunch special is oh, it's incredible. It's unbelievable. It's maybe my favorite food in the world. Is this right here? You're looking at it. Top food. Um, Most enjoyed. Didn't drive this Ferrari, saw this in a Starbucks. And that's Bear Island. Cool. Well, thanks for hanging out in the stream with me, everybody. Oh, hey, alright, it's Roxanne. Hey, hello. Wow, I just see that the chat is there. I am headed out, Roxanne, but great to see that someone's watching. Oh, we are just finishing up. Yeah, thanks for joining me. Cool. That's the first chat. Sorry I didn't see it earlier, Roxanne. But yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna head out. I need to go for a walk, and I also need to go shopping. I haven't gone grocery shopping in like 2 weeks, and well, a week and a half. So, gotta do that. It's important to have food in the house. There's nowhere else to get it. This has been Connor again from Pittsburgh. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope I was able to, talk a little bit about the physics and the math behind how to kind of draw reflections of surfaces. And oh, we didn't even go back in and add value to this landscape, right? But just imagine that I went back in there with grayscale and it was as dark up here as it is in its reflection, if not darker, right? It will be darker because we're getting direct light, and this is reflected, and so inherently it's going to lose some information, some light, some detail, And when you're drawing, thinking about the physics of it, thinking about the photons, how many photons, how much information might be coming from the dark part of the canvas, or a light part of the canvas, too much information. Thinking about capturing a scene in layers of value, the way that a camera would in black and white or in grayscale, as just a percentage of shadow, a percentage of photons or no photons. It's an interesting way to work, and I guess it's one that I am advocating here and in the rest of my life. These are some of the tools I've learned. I'm just trying to pass them on. So with these creepy rabbits and some of these cool geese and ducks and some of this learning, let us adjourn. I will be streaming again next week. If you want to follow my newsletter, that's how you can find out when these streams are happening. I don't really announce them on YouTube anymore. The best place to find my newsletter is to go to www.connorsbe.com and just click on the link that says newsletter, and it lets you sign up for the newsletter. That's the way I communicate with the world for the most part. I go in depth about what's up with my life and what I'm drawing, what I'm thinking about, what projects I'm working on, what's going on around the neighborhood in Pittsburgh. It is ConnorSB.com, CONNOR, S as in Sierra, B as in Bravo.com. Be well, have fun, and I will see you guys in this coming week. Have a great day. And thanks for watching, Roxanne. Oh, shout out to Roxanne. Bye.